If we just wipe the slate clean and look at what God's given us and don't think about what he's given somebody else, no Christian would feel like we've been shortchanged by God.
And it all goes back to that self-centeredness, that I'm the most important. And if you live like that, then what happens is, your feelings are going to get hurt all the time because, well, all you're concerned about is comparing yourself to everybody else.
And really, it's not the worrying that's your problem, it's your trusting. At least it's been for me, anyway.
Well, that's the you're either going to worry or you're going to trust.
Yeah. Questions for you today. I just want your opinion, actually.
You going to ask it in the show, or you going to...
I can ask them whenever.
Well, I mean, is it show worthy?
I think so.
All right, then let's hold tight. You want to give me a precursor so I can at least think on it?
Yeah.
Dwell on these things?
The book of Mark and Matthew.
Okay.
You know Matt.
Yeah. That's what I thought you would say. I was like, okay, Matt. All right. Is it having to do with differences, or is it having to do with...
No, those are the chapter 14, Mark and Matt 23 and 24.
Yeah.
The clearing of the temple.
Yeah.
That's the headline.
All right, so we'll wait till the show starts, man. I like that idea.
I think we're good now. I think we're
doing this
anyway.
Right here.
Anyway, before you do that, how's everybody doing?
Good.
All right.
Good. How you doing, Kenny?
Pretty good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I missed the big microphone, though. I really do. I feel like you ought to be calling.
Yeah,
that's a long fly ball out to right field.
The problem with that
He's tracking
microphone
it
is it ain't nothing but a prop most of the time. I never use the audio.
Oh, really?
That was just to let him.
I mean, I've always recorded audio on it, but then it always ends up being that one's the better sounding of them. So that might be this much better on a couple of little clips, but the rest of the time it's not worth the trouble.
Really?
So all the times that I brought it in here, the last time I brought it in here, it didn't even...
You didn't hear nothing but paper rustling.
That's right.
So this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, y'all are doing a study called Jesus' Final Week.
Yes, and I wanted to, I don't know if I can, but what I really wanted to do is start early enough to have it finished by the time you preach Easter Sunday.
Time we get to Easter.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I don't think I can do it.
You don't think it's...
Well,
did you start too early or too late?
We started too late, plus I don't know if we'll meet Wednesday or not.
Oh, this is a Wednesday night study.
Yes.
Not a Sunday morning. Okay.
No. But anyway, I just want your take on some things.
Okay.
I mean, I just want, not necessarily a second opinion, but another perspective.
All right.
So,
Who's the first?
Is that a teaser, or you want to do it now? I mean, we're live.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah.
Do I need to say welcome back to the other one?
Yeah,
67?
yes.
You know what
Yes.
it is.
Yes.
Because
So
a lot of
give me-
times we got about 10,
Hello,
15
everybody.
minutes in.
Yeah, we usually don't.
Okay. Here's what is biblical anger based on Jesus
Well, you
clearing
have
the
the
temple.
words righteous indignation that always comes up. And I would think the way I would best describe that is whatever makes God angry. It would be biblical anger. I think it's okay to be angry. We're going to get angry over things. I think it's how you handle your anger.
Well, that's what I'm
and
talking
whether you
about.
let anger get out of the way. So really, anger is an emotion. Biblical anger would be handling that emotion in a biblical manner. Which means, not blowing your cool. I think there's times that it's right to blow. Look, when Jesus comes into the temple, he's not Mr. Nice Guy. He's angry over the fact of here are the religious leaders putting yet another barrier to get to God. That, okay, you brought an animal to sacrifice. Your animal doesn't meet standards. We got a booth right over here for you that we'll sell to you. Or doing anything that, basically making a buck off religion. And
Well, yeah,
it's putting
that
a
was part
barrier.
of it, yes.
So therefore, one thing that we should be angry over is anything that's a barrier or people put up in front of that would keep someone from knowing a real relationship with God or knowing who He is. So that's one thing that he would get angry over. There's a couple of things he got angry over in the scriptures. Anytime you hear him say, woe, you Pharisees, you whitewashed tombs, he's not saying that in a loving manner. don't know that he's being hateful, but he surely is angry. Why? Because yet they put more burdens, more obstacles than they did to try to make it easy to know God.
Well, I think biblical anger would kind of be like, well, here's what it's not. It's not being angry to hurt somebody, but it's being angry of an injustice.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anything that's an injustice. But I think it also is, I don't know that I would ever say it was personal as much as it is. I'm more angry about what's happening.
Once you start calling people names and that kind of thing, that's crossed the line.
I mean,
Yeah.
you whitewash tombs, you're full of dead man's bones.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
Yes.
That's name calling.
Well,
Is it not? I mean, I think it's one
he was,
of.
or was he just describing their spiritual condition?
But that's pretty. I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, he was
that's in
telling
your
you the
face,
truth,
though, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was telling the truth, but I'm talking about getting angry over something that's doesn't really mean, just almost to a point you're calling people names.
Right.
Justice anger would be, if I put it in a secular area, would be being upset, angry about abortion.
I agree.
That's an injustice.
But going to the point of trying to blow up a abortion clinic,
yes,
or
that's going too far.
being hateful to a girl that has gotten an abortion, or treating them, rather than trying to, show them love and respect, to try to help them to see, hey, let's think about this is a child.
To correct a wrong, but not to correct that person, I guess.
In a way, but sometimes there is going to have to be a correction of people.
This is, yeah.
I think it's how you go about it.
Yes.
You can correct a person in a very offensive, very in your face, versus with gentleness and respect. Now, again, you grabbing a whip and going through and slashing and getting people out of the temple, that's probably not the, I don't know that I would say it doesn't always have to be that way. But then again, we're not Jesus. And I think for us, gentleness and respect at the same time, there are going to be times when you have to.
Yes, and I agree with what you're saying too. Sometimes that will happen. Obviously, he did not sin because he's
sure. That's right.
So why he took the whip, I really don't know, but I do know why he was upset, because the temple. There's two things going on. The temple was corrupted.
Sure.
People, the priests were making money.
Yeah. They were putting an obstacle in front of us, trying to get God.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the other thing is they weren't really. I guess you could call them priests, but they really weren't men of God.
Right.
They were more thieves and whatever. I mean, I don't know what you would call them.
Where did he get his whip from?
He probably brought it with him. I don't know.
He wasn't Indiana Jones. He didn't carry one around.
I don't know. Where did he get it?
If you'll, I think it's in Mark. He actually saw.
Okay.
He went and he made the whip. Now, you don't make a whip in a day. I mean, or in 3 minutes.
Right.
So to me, that tells me this was not
calculated.
This was not a blowing off of steam. This was not a just, because we all, in times of pressure or upset, say something we shouldn't, or say something off the top of our head, or and say something we regret.
Right.
This was calculated. This was thought out. This was a time to cool down, to say, and I like that about that. Hey, if I'm gonna be angry and really go off, I'm gonna give it time to really think about it. The old count to 10. That's pretty good, but 10 seconds usually don't buy you enough time. This took him longer than 10 seconds, and he thought through this.
Good point.
Well, thank you. Wow.
That is one of those interesting little tidbits in the Bible.
You amaze me. I wasn't expecting something like that.
Yeah, golly, look at that. He said something profound.
That is one of those interesting little tidbits from the Bible that it's easy to miss. I wouldn't have known that to think about that part of the whip.
And I think in Mark it says that he went out and basically weaved it together or put it together. So he didn't just up and do it. No, he really thought through this thing.
I think we have to be, or I have to be careful with it, that whatever I think is a righteous anger, and I have a right to be, try to go ahead and assume that about 90% of those I need to probably cool my jets on is probably not really a righteous indignation.
Well, we like to use that term,
Yeah.
and we like to think anything that we're involved with would
Right.
be righteous indignation.
Yeah.
When, okay, I'm angry about the way the government wastes money. All
Yeah.
right. At the same time, I can be wrong that my taxpayers are going to fund abortions if they were,
Right.
and if they are, that makes me angry.
Yeah.
Because that's. But now, or some studies in overseas that has nothing to do or is basically against God. Yeah, I'm gonna be angry at that. And then what you gonna do?
Yeah.
For us, it is okay. Then we need to go vote somebody out or grassroots. But
Yeah.
I doubt I'm gonna go up to Washington and get in somebody's face over it.
Yeah.
Was Jesus angry at the system, which is part of the people, or the individuals? I think he was just. Well, of course, he's angry at the Pharisees all the time. They didn't like him anyway. Actually, they despised him.
I would say
but they
both.
despised him because of, it was costing them money.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say both. I mean, that was the Pharisees hated him from day one because he was a threat to their power, their position,
exactly.
their popularity.
Yes.
And so, but I think is he mad at the system or the people? It's got to be both. I mean, because he point blank says, he calls them, you robbers,
Yeah, I don't know if he was mad at the money, because I don't know if they were Pharisees, but he could have been mad at the money exchangers or what.
So I think if they were charging a fair price,
Yes.
or didn't
But
have
that's what we
didn't
don't
have
know.
a ownership of the only game in town. I mean, they had a monopoly. Once you got to the temple,
You had to buy your
you
sheep.
got to buy it from here.
Yeah.
And you might bring one, but they can easily say,
Blemished.
we see a defect,
Yeah.
go one over here.
Yeah.
And you're only going to buy it from there. And so they're able to mark it up at an exorbitant amount.
Yeah.
And that leaves, and that's, again, that's the problem. And so, yeah, I think it was a little bit of both.
Well, I had a topic for today that I've been thinking about a lot in the last few days, I guess. And we've probably had this conversation a few different times. This is just maybe a different way of framing it, I guess. But you said Sunday at the end of the sermon, go and put it into practice.
Yeah.
Right, and that word practice, and you hear people talk about practicing your faith. I sort of think about sports and the difference in practicing and playing
Right.
in sports. Gabe in basketball is a good example. If you just put him in a gym shooting, he's pretty good. And in fact, the other day he was keeping stats of all of his. I mean, he hit probably a higher percentage of his threes and jump shots than I would. But you put him in a game, he's got to get himself open, and he's got to fight with other people. It's a whole different thing.
It's different when you guard it.
Yeah, same thing with me playing golf. If they had world driving range championships, I'd be right up there.
Or playing by myself.
That's right.
I can do pretty well when I'm by myself
Yeah.
or whatever.
But when you get out there and the course starts playing defense on you, it's a little different game, and when you got opponents and things like that. But there's a big difference in when we think about practicing your faith in that kind of a context. It's saying it differently than the way you did it on Sunday.
Right.
It's kind of making the same point. You can come to Bible study, go to church, read the Bible, pray, record podcasts. All of that kind of falls into the practicing your faith
Right.
category to me. But playing your faith, the difference that I think about in sports is a lot of people love the games. I think Allen Iverson, he didn't like to
Yeah.
practice, but he loved the games.
Practice.
Faith games aren't usually going to be very fun.
No.
The times you get to apply your faith are going to be some pretty brutal times sometimes. It's when loved ones are sick, when you lose somebody, when you've been praying and praying and praying for somebody that you care about and you're not seeing any changes, when you have money troubles at home, trouble with spouses, other
When life
relationships.
hits.
Yeah, none of these are fun.
No.
And that's really when you get to practice. That's when you get to play the faith
That's when it
game.
becomes
so to speak.
real.
That's right. That's when all that time you spent practicing, all that time you went to church, all that time you spent reading the Bible, all the time you spent talking about all these things and saying you believe it, and you may believe it. But if heat of battle comes and you don't lean on it, well, then what good was it?
Right.
What was the point of it? But it's hardly ever. I'm sure there's some examples of times that actually putting your faith into practice or playing your faith, as I'm calling it, is a fun time, but I can't think of any off the top of my
Well,
head.
I mean, I think it's one of growing in your faith. If you're going to really grow and go deeper with the Lord, oftentimes it is going to require a challenge, a test, or a time when you felt like I'm not sure what I'm going to do or I'm stepping out. It's like, faith is a muscle. It's got to be exercised. And no matter what you do, no exercise that I know of that really accomplished something. Now, again, walking, okay, whatever, but it's still, it requires effort. It requires, but oftentimes the deepest growth is always going to come during the most difficult times.
We had a Bible study on Monday nights on Zoom that Doug's doing, and we were talking about it last night.
Excited about that.
Yeah, it was. It's been a really good study. We had a lot more people on it last night than we did the first week. But I thought of this last night. We were talking about sanctification, and I said, sanctification sounds great, and we want that.
Sure.
But the process itself isn't a lot of fun a lot of times. It's
Well, I mean, it's really the process of dying more to self. So, what part of that sounds fun from a human standpoint?
yeah.
From a Christian born again standpoint, okay, now we start talking about the results and everything else. But yeah, that oftentimes is going to require chastisement. It might require chastening, punishing. It may require pruning, which I don't know. My grapevines have ever said, "Please cut that whole limb off of me, please,"
Yeah.
because pruning is not a easy thing. But when it's pruned, it bears much fruit. At least I hope it does.
Yeah.
I hope so too. This year I've got 31 cases.
You're
down.
ready to roll.
Ready to roll.
How much we know. I believe God's real. He's shown himself to be real in my life in many different times, many different ways. There are times that in that moment you can feel his presence. You have that. Then there are other times that you are just leaning on the faith. He's always present, but we don't always have that radio tuned to the right frequency to hear him, as you said before, those types of things. But it's at the times that are those tough times that it's hard to see him. It's hard to know where he's at in this. It's hard to see his ways. And I guess maybe the question I'm trying to get around to in that is that intentional maybe on his part, because he needs us to lean on that faith. If he just sits there and chirps in your ear and he proves himself to you day after day after day, hour after hour, you don't have room to lean on faith. Mm-hmm. Even though you believe it to be true and he's proven it to you in the past and you're drawing off of those things, there's some times where you just kind of look around and it kind of feels like you're in the dark a little bit and you're not sure, why am I here? Why am I in this situation? Where's God at and all this? Why hasn't he come back yet? And I think back to a show a while back where you said, sometimes he needs to let us cook a little bit and just
There's cook.
and see how we're going to handle situations. But does he need to, I don't want to say leave us alone. He's not leaving us alone, but does he need to let us feel that sometimes a little bit so we do have to have just blind faith?
Well, I don't know if we have blind faith, to be honest, but faith is not a feeling. It never has been, never will be. But me personally, I've relied on feeling a lot more than I have my faith. It's got me into a lot of trouble. But there's nowhere in the Bible where faith is a byproduct of feeling. Maybe feeling is a byproduct. Actually, feeling is a byproduct of faith, because for me it has been for confidence. I know God's going to work it out. I've been here before. I don't know how it's going to be. My problem, and I think a lot of Christians' problem, is we have a need to know what's going on. We have this need. Prophecy is the greatest one, that we need to know how this world's going to end. Well, we do. We know the highlights, but we don't know the details. If we did, it would confuse us. Like Revelation. John's talking about grasshoppers or what. Maybe they're helicopters, but in his mind, he couldn't believe what he was seeing because he didn't understand it. But today, living in this world and seeing all that's going on, I understand Revelation a lot more than he did. But I don't know. But I don't understand enough of it. Very little of it, because it's not in my generation.
Right.
And I think he was just, it's hard to prophesy in your language 2,000 years ago for
What you're seeing.
what we're seeing today. And it's just like, I guess, the prophets trying to, interpret how the Messiah would come. 2,000, well, yeah, I mean, at least that started, well, it might have been, I don't know, Adam, 4,000 years or whenever. It just, but they didn't really understand it. But that generation knew when they saw it, oh, I get it now. But looking forward, it's hard to understand. But looking in the past, you can really,
Well, the verse that I brought up last week in Jeremiah, where I think it was like Jeremiah 49:50, where it's just paragraph, passage after passage after passage of how much of God's anger, and then in the end it says, "In the end times, I will restore you." When in the Old Testament, when he talks about in the restoring his people in the end times, correct me if I'm wrong on this, he's talking about the end of times. He's not just talking about because Jesus, the coming of Jesus and him dying on the cross was the start of a new era.
Right.
But then the Messianic reign, 1,000 years in times, is a different version of that. So, when he talks about in the end I'll restore your people, is he talking about in 700 years when Jesus comes, or is he talking about in the end?
I think it's a little bit of both.
That's
it
right,
can
yeah.
be fulfilled in both.
Yes.
But I think the ultimate fulfillment is going to be at the end. But fulfillment has been found or has come, but the ultimate fulfillment is going to be. So it is not unusual for a prophecy to have two layers. And one layer may be when Christ came. Jesus said, I'm trying to think about the best way to describe this. When he was talking about the temple being destroyed, nobody knew, but that was 70 A.D., but he was talking about his body. Destroy this temple, and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. Well, he also knew that 70 A.D., the temple was going to be destroyed, because a little bit later he's going to prophesy that. So there's usually some layers to the prophecy. Genesis 3, there are some who would argue that the serpent tempted Cain to take out Abel because, he thought that was the seed of the woman. Well, he knew it was a prophecy, but it was going to come much later. So there's always two or three layers usually to some degree, but that's one that, fulfilled in Jesus, yes. But ultimate fulfillment is going to be in the end times.
Well, that is one of the criteria for for the books of the prophecies of the Bible. Something had to happen during your lifetime, or when you were prophesying because the Bible says that a prophet is telling the truth when it happens.
So he gets 100.
So it's partially. A lot of the things are partially fulfilled in their lifetime, and then later on down the line. But there's a lot of prophecy that hasn't been fully completed.
Oh, yeah.
Because in those times they're hearing. I mean, when you're going into slavery in those chapters of the Bible, and you're hearing these prophecies from Jeremiah or Isaiah, just started Ezekiel, so I'm starting to get into that. It sounds like it would be encouraging to the people going into captivity to know, well, in the end, this is all going to work out. But it didn't work out in the end of their lifetimes or their kids' lifetimes.
Depends on how old they were,
Yeah, I mean
70 years, that's pretty much 2 generations about it.
Yeah.
Well, death sentence for some people.
One lifetime if you were born, give or take.
Yeah.
So.
But Daniel, he lived through it all. He was, 80-something, 90 maybe?
Right.
Yeah, he did.
But even that was just getting through the captivity and getting released back. I mean, because when Jesus came, everybody was all excited, thinking that this was finally his kingdom had come, and now
kingdom has come.
Everything's going to be great for Jews from now on. Well, no, it wasn't.
The kingdom did come.
Yeah.
But they had the wrong perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. They wanted to be like Israel, like it was during the times of David.
Yeah.
Where they were, I guess, the number one power or something.
Well, they were a superpower at the time.
At that time,
considering. But back to the original question, and I think it's important to understand that okay, you feel like God is not there. Well, that's not true. We know He's there, and we know that the angel of the Lord encompasses those who fear Him. We also know that He is near to the brokenhearted, and He heals those that are crushed in
Let
spirit.
me interrupt you. Explain what the angel of the Lord is, so people.
I believe. Well, I mean, in the Old Testament, that's a reference to Christ
Right.
Himself.
Yeah, I just
And,
people might not know.
So I mean, but I would say it's the Holy Spirit now, which is the Spirit of the Lord. So He encompasses those who fear Him. He is near to the brokenhearted, and He heals those that are crushed in spirit. So we know He's near. It just may be that He's just not as loud and vocal. And sometimes you just need to know that doesn't mean He doesn't care. It doesn't mean He's not that He doesn't have His eye or the thumb on the pulse. It just may mean that, hey, you don't have to hear from me all the time. You don't. You sometimes it's to show you're grown. You know, Renee's in the house. I know that, and I know she loves me. I know she cares for me, but she doesn't have to sit down and watch every basketball game with me during March Madness.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably a bad analogy. At the same time, I know she's in there, and I know, you know, if I need her or if she needs me, she can call. And I think it's just one of, sometimes the Lord does let us go through those times, knowing He's not there, but that's where that trust comes in, that I'm still going to operate in faith, knowing that He is here, and I know He's going to take care of what needs to be taken care of.
And I think what I'm talking about is the difference in feeling that presence and feeling that peace and feeling, you know, there have been, I've experienced it about every combination of ways, I guess, where I've been in, you know, good, happy times and you feel His presence, good, happy times, and maybe you don't feel His presence quite as much as you did others. Tough times that I felt His presence and His peace, and tough times where I didn't feel it as much. And it's that last one probably is the one that's really the most testing of your faith, because you're calling for Him, and you know you need Him, and you know He knows you need Him, and why are you not feeling that presence quite as much as you did before? And you know, why at this particular time are you not feeling it as much as you would before? Why would He not be there to give you the comfort, peace, guidance, whatever it is you're asking for at that time? And I guess the point of it is part of His process in working in us to sometimes need us to lean just on the fact that, hey, like you said, you're growing up in it. You know I'm here. I don't need to. Yeah. You ought to be able to not say you ought to be able to handle this one on your own. It's not that, but just.
But I've given you everything you need to take care of it.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like my youngins are grown. 27, 25, and they live in a different state. They're taking care of themselves. I feel like Renee and I equipped them with everything they need, but they can always call, and we always FaceTime, and we're always. But I think another thing, and this is one that I would encourage folks, if you're going through that kind of time when maybe, and I know you're using the word don't feel His presence or anything else, I believe there's a couple of verses that I've always reminded myself of. And one is, the Lord inhabits the praises of His people. The other one is in John 4. Jesus is at a well, and there's a woman who comes, and he basically, they have it's an interesting conversation, but in the end, Jesus says, the Father is looking for worshipers who will worship Him in spirit and in truth. The Lord inhabits the praises of His people. He's looking for worshipers. If you feel like you're not close to God, start worshiping. Because I put those two together. If He's looking for worshipers and He inhabits the praises of His people, man, start praising. And you'll find out, man, you'll find yourself closer, and you'll find yourself in the presence of the Lord. And I think it goes back to in spirit and truth. I think that's an important part. But man, I've always thought, man, the Lord inhabits the praises of His people. But then you see in Psalms, David, sometimes he starts out praising, then he tends to go back to the focus of the problem. Then he'll always come back to the praise, usually. There's only about 2 or 3 Psalms in the whole 150. He didn't write them all, but all they end up with, well, God's not on the throne, or God's, he ends with, but I know who's going to win, or I know who God is.
Yeah.
So I think the key to that, if you ever get to that place, is start worshiping.
Yeah.
Because you'll find he inhabits those praises.
I agree, and really the problem is us, that God hadn't changed. It's us.
And the problem also is, I know when I read the Psalms and some of the ones that I'm going through right now, think about the situation David's in. Praising is not usually my number one thought on my mind when I'm running for my life and I'm hiding in caves and I hadn't had anything to eat for a week, or I'm looking for water and I can't find any because I'm running into the wilderness because I got a crazy man named Saul, or my own son has basically kicked me out or did a coup against me. Yeah, that's some pretty bad stuff. And, let alone all the other things Daniel was involved in. I mean, there's some, in fact, right now we're doing Psalm 34, and it is so rich and so deep that I'm going to end up taking 3 weeks just to dedicate to that one psalm because there's so much going on there. Yeah. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm reading too much into it or just seeing too much in it. But man.
No, 34, they're all good, actually.
There's one or two.
How much time are you going to spend on Psalms 117?
I don't think it made the list.
Oh, you're doing the list. Okay.
Top 25.
Okay.
Top 25 at 25. That's the name.
Psalms 119 making the list?
Psalms 119 I use as the intro kind of, because that's so many verses.
Yeah, it is.
Is that the longest one?
Yes, by far.
Yeah, it's like, it's.
It'll take you 3 or 4 days to read it.
Fun fact. Well, it doesn't take you 3 or 4 days.
No, well, if you.
Fun fact. I received a punishment when I was in middle school.
That's right.
It was to write all 100 and I think it's 150.
157.
Yeah.
It's in the 150s. I think.
Yeah, it's a ton of verses. We had to write that, and
How many
I got to a
pages
place
does that
where I
mean?
started doing just lines.
Chicken scratch.
It's the longest. I know it's the longest chapter with verses, but I don't know.
176.
Is it the longest chapter itself?
I'd be willing to bet it is. 176 verses.
Yeah, verses. Yes,
And there is not none of them are that short.
Yeah.
Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light
a lot
unto
of-
my
there's a
path.
lot of good
That's a whole lot longer than Jesus wept. So yeah, I think it's you know what though I have found, and I was trying to think the other day as I'm reading through various books, which writer had the longest sentences. Just seemed to be going on and on. I know. If you want to talk about who had the nastiest Greek, it was Peter.
Yes.
But I'm just talking about which one had, just seems to be man. I mean, Paul was quite loquacious.
Well, who wrote the most in the New Testament?
Well, technically Luke did, if you really want to know the chapters.
The words.
Yeah.
Luke and Acts. Paul was second. Who's number 3? Is it John? That
Yeah,
might
it'd have to
pretty
be
close.
John. Depends on who you want to give
Yeah.
Hebrews to.
Well,
But you can't
if you give it to Paul, that'd be Paul's still
he'd
number
win.
2. Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, you're talking about Luke.
Yeah.
Well, John's number 3 regardless. That doesn't change his.
I give, he's number 3. First, second, third John and Revelation. John's up there. Revelation's 21 chapters. So anyway,
Yeah, that's just a trivia question.
One of the things I noticed this week is, and this is maybe a weird thing to say, but I've been worrying about a lot of stuff lately. And I know better than to worry. My favorite verse in the Bible is,
It happens.
Yeah, is don't worry about tomorrow. And there I'm worried about it. So I've noticed, though, that the more I worry, the less I tend to pray. And there's a reason for that. Because when I'm worrying about something and I pray about the thing I'm worrying about, even if it's to pray for God to help me not to worry or please, give me peace, what it still turns into is I start sounding like a whiny brat, and I know I sound like a whiny brat, and then I feel it starts to kind of feel like, well, I know God wants me to pray,
right.
but He don't want to hear me whining. If He has to choose between hearing me whine and not hearing me at all, He'd probably rather not hear me say anything than to just sit here and whine. I mean, I know what He wants me to do, but even if I'm doing that, I might just be going through the motions and not really, He knows what's in my heart anyway.
Right.
So it can create a distance between you and God, despite your best efforts, because it's your heart that's the problem, right? You're needing to change your heart to mean the words that you know are right.
Yeah, I think there are times when, and I want to be careful how I say this, because if we're struggling in the area of temptation, we're struggling in the area of sin, I don't think God has a problem at all with us going and just asking for help. God, I need your help. But I think oftentimes we go to him and it's, God help me not to worry. God help me not to. And I think he would almost say, I already have.
Yeah.
I've given you all you need for life and godliness.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know that he would ever, get to the place of, I don't even want to hear him. At the same time, I'm sure he'd get to the place where he'd say, I already have.
My grace
Why are you asking for this? Pray more about the problem. Pray more about my glory. Pray more about what I can do in this problem or this situation, rather than, oh Lord, just help me not to worry. Well, no, let's get to the meat of the issue there, and let's really pray for what needs to be prayed for. And I think that might be what I would say to that. At the same time, look, man, God knows our hurts and God knows our problems and issues, and there is nothing wrong with someone that it really struggles to cry out and say, God help.
Yeah.
I am really, really struggling on this.
Yeah.
I mean, but at the same time, that victory's been given too.
We want a quick fix, but I worry. That's an open-ended question. What are you worried about? Sometimes we're just too general on our prayer request
Or prayers,
yeah.
prayers.
And really, it's not the worrying that's your problem; it's your trusting. At least it's been for me, anyway.
Well, that's the you're either going to worry or you're going to trust.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those are the two, and they're antithesis of one another.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's when you're worrying. I think I've heard you say this before. That when you're worrying, what you're basically doing is not trusting God.
Yeah. God, you're not going to do what you said you're going to do.
Right.
God, you can't do what you said you're going to do.
Yeah.
God, there's no way for you to provide a way out here.
Yeah.
God, you're limit. You are limited in your power because I'm just so worried. And again, I think there's a difference between. And again, I'm not trying to justify sin by no means. That's not what I'm doing here. But I do think there's a big difference between worry and concern. Mm-hmm. Worrying is just fretting yourself to death.
Yeah.
Concern over my child, concern over my child's spiritual well-being, that's a little bit different than worry. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a time when you really have to examine, am I worrying or is this a legit concern? Kind of like anger. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can be mad because somebody did something to me, or am I mad for the right reasons? And we'll try our best to turn that into, I'm mad for the right reasons because they shouldn't have said that to me or whatever.
Yeah.
And usually, and I found that pride and anger kind of go together. People to get upset over stuff, or I tell you, here lately, man, I've been running more into people got their feelings hurt,
Really?
And I didn't, there's nothing like, and so it's just one of those things and it's nothing anybody did. Mm-hmm. They're just looking to have their feelings hurt. I mean, really. I mean, it might be that, I didn't get somebody didn't give me the flowers they gave somebody else, or I didn't get something, or they didn't say hello to me and they said hello to you. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You're going to get your feelings hurt over something silly like that.
There's a point to that that I've seen is mostly in inheritance. It's not what you got, not what I got that bothers me. It's what you got. Mm-hmm. That bothers me because if it's even $1 more, that's what bothers me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and that's in
that.
It's that human's part of us that we've been undone.
The pride part. Yes.
Well, I was thinking about that this morning, actually, that it's so natural, maybe is the word, the way we're just naturally born, our natural instincts is to compare to others and to look at, okay, well, if we just wipe the slate clean and look at what God's given us and don't think about what he's given somebody else or what somebody else, don't compare anything else. No Christian on earth would feel like we've been shortchanged by God. Right. I mean, he's given far more abundantly to us than we deserve. He takes care of and when you think about all the more basic our needs are, the more we take them for granted, and the more we sure would change course real quick if it was taken away from us. I mean, I'm talking as basic as oxygen.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Or
like,
bread.
how often do we take the time to thank God for every breath of oxygen that we got during a day?
Sure.
Well, that's probably when you said if all the things you didn't thank God for, He would take away.
Yeah.
If you, what would happen if you did that? Well, the first
Right.
thing would happen is I quit breathing because I'm constantly forgetting to thank
just
Him for the air.
the
You know.
constant upcare and uptake, or the constant that He provides for us. You're right.
Yeah. So all the
Oh,
basic
like-
things that we have to have. When's the last time we did without them? Mm-hmm. You know, one way or the other, He provides them. Now, all the little cherries on top and the whipped cream and the sprinkles and all this other stuff that's kind of irrelevant. That's the stuff we agonize about,
Yeah,
we
it
worry
is,
about, and
it
all this
is.
stuff.
It's you're right. Yeah,
We all got
They got
sprinkles,
more
they got
money
more
than me.
sprinkles, you know, or they got 2 cherries.
it's only it's only a temporary thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know, well, they got twice as much money as I have. It's just temporary.
We might have asked for chocolate syrup and somebody else gets
Yeah,
caramel. And now
yeah,
we're mad because we
yeah,
didn't know he had
yeah.
caramel.
Wait,
You know?
wait another 100 years.
Yep.
It'll be the same.
Yep.
Yeah, everything will.
But it is, and it all goes back to that self-centeredness,
Yeah, it is.
that I'm the most important, or and and if you live like that, then what happens is, yeah, your feelings are going to get hurt all the time, or there's going to be things that you're going to be so sensitive because all you're concerned about is comparing yourself to everybody else.
Yeah.
You got. There's 8 pictures of you in the den when there's only 5 of me. That kind of thing that people kind of get into, that you're like, I don't care.
I ain't never
mean,
that many.
But there's got to be there's got to be a time
You heard us.
when and the more we're self-centered and more focused on ourselves, man, the less and less it takes to set us off.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one other question to ask you.
Oh, this
The
is back
fig-
to the
yes,
last week,
yeah.
huh?
The fig
You're
tree.
bookending it.
The fig tree.
Uh-huh.
That's the next event.
Okay.
When he curses the fig tree. Now, he cursed the fig tree, but it wasn't because it didn't have any figs, no fruit.
Had leaves.
Yeah, it had leaves, but no fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't time to have fruit.
Right.
Okay. And then, so, why did he curse the fig tree? Because this is how I used to look at it, but why did he curse the fig tree? Because it wasn't time for it to have fruit.
Well, I mean, I think the thing of it is where does the what I mean, the ultimate what the fig
Yeah.
tree represents,
Yes.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. So the fig
That's-
tree is always symbolic of Israel,
Israel.
right? And he goes looking for fruit. They got plenty of leaves.
Yes.
They look like they're alive,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no fruit whatsoever. And I think that's very symbolic of where Israel was at that time.
And he was taking their position away.
Right. And so I don't know
Turning
that,
it over to the Gentiles.
and I don't know that he was starving and had wanting
No,
a fig
no,
so
I
bad.
think it was just-
as much as he was using as a lesson for the
Yes.
disciples that were there of this fig tree represents Israel. And it should be bearing fruit, even though, maybe it was springtime and it isn't the time to bear fruit.
Right, and this is back to back, because figs come in June.
Yeah,
No, not June.
Well, around here they're summer,
September, yes, August. But
about the same time as my grapes. I got a fig tree.
yes, and so the first time he curses, I wouldn't say he cursed the temple, but he overthrew money exchangers. That was the temple. And the next one, so that represents the corruption in Israel.
Right. And the
And-
corruption of how they had corrupted the law and the Levitical.
God's holy place. And then the next one is the fig tree,
The nation of Israel.
and they knew they were the chosen people, but they forgot why they were chosen.
And they were chosen to be a light unto the
Yeah,
Gentiles
but they
and a
forgot
light unto
that.
the nations.
It's almost like a pride thing
Yep.
for them. They were the chosen. They just forgot what they were chosen for.
Well, and Gentiles were the Gentile dogs.
Yes, and so
But that was never the way God intended.
I think that's how what Jesus ultimately was trying to show the disciples.
Yeah, sure it was.
Okay.
I mean, let's face facts. If you want to know, there's probably not ever been a more religious nation on this earth than Israel was when Jesus was here.
Right.
I mean, they were staunch about no idolatry. I mean, they were not going back to
They were
exile.
very legalistic.
But no, they were not going back to exile.
Right.
In fact, they would die. They would stick their neck out to Caesar and say, "Cut my head off. Then you're not putting that eagle in here. You're not doing that." I mean, they were very much.
And they did that. Was Pompous?
Sure, they did.
Was it Pompous or who?
And so you had some of the most religious people and religious nation at the time. Problem is, it was all leaves, no fruit.
Right.
It was all for show, but no dough. I don't know, all for show and no putting forth, no fruit coming forth that would be for any kind of reality.
Fruit. There was no fruit. The Spirit.
Yeah, there was no fruit. It was all a show.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really what Jesus is doing there, is saying, nation of Israel, you put on a good show, but it's not real.
You had your time.
Yep.
There was a really cool analogy. This is slightly different topic, but really good analogy somebody gave Thursday morning.
He's done found another question.
No, this is these are this is next week because this is going to be tough. Matthew 24.
Oh, Olivet Discourse?
Yes.
Yeah, that's no joke.
So somebody told him, I think this was a true story. If it was, these people were crazy. But there was apparently a tightrope walker that gets halfway out, and then he asks the wheelbarrow story. Do you know this story?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've heard
Is
it
it
several
true?
different ways.
Is it true or is it symbolic?
If you look it up, it's the Great Bondini, I think is his name. And there was a tightrope walker that could do that. Now, whether or not he did Niagara Falls, I don't know.
Well, the story goes that he gets halfway out there or whatever, and he starts asking the crowd who thinks I can make it or whatever.
Yeah.
And,
Well, then one is he ain't gonna get halfway across Niagara Falls and be able to say
And then
who
stop.
thinks I can make it.
right, yeah. I mean,
And they hear it. Have you ever been? I mean, it's huge.
yeah.
And I can't even hear you standing next to me, all that water falling. So, but if he got all the way across or halfway, I mean, it's been told so many times that it's got to be some measure of truth somewhere.
yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, and it doesn't matter. The point was that maybe the way I heard it was he got 10 feet from the edge or
Yeah,
whatever.
that
it
could
was.
be. Or
And it may have total.
he made the trip across, and then he asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, he gets towards the end, and he says, "Who thinks I can make it?" And everybody says, "We think you'll make it." Well, one in particular, I don't know why he called him out, but basically he says, "Who thinks I can push a wheelbarrow the rest of the way across?" And everybody's kind of betting on who can do it. Well, he gets the wheelbarrow out there, and he says, "Okay, who really thinks I can make it? Get in the wheelbarrow."
Yeah.
And according to the story, the guy did get in, and he pushed him across. I don't believe that, but whatever. The point being, if you're not all the way in the barrel,
But the illustration is: are you willing to trust God to put yourself in a wheelbarrow, if you will?
Yeah.
Wheelbarrow of faith to say, no matter where He takes me, I'm trusting He's going to guide me and keep me safe or push me.
well, and the point this guy made in it was that if you're not all the way in, it makes it harder to balance it, and you're more likely
Right.
to fall if you just like kind of hanging in, half out kind of thing, and you have to be 100% all in and still to do that. And tying that back to something we talked about.
I'd
this
make the
week,
argument you're 100% all in if you can step out of fall on that.
I-
Well, now it might not be balanced right.
Yeah.
But you believed it.
Yeah, but if you are not, if you're hanging on
If
to
you're
the
not
side of it, not all the
positioned
way in
right,
it,
I
if you're not
get that.
positioned, it can be a problem.
But I believe you all in.
But now here's the kind of ties to what I texted you the other day about the rich young ruler. Something I had maybe not noticed about that story before is that the words Jesus said to the rich young ruler when he said to go sell all of his stuff were the exact same. It was the same command that he gave Peter and Andrew in the earlier.
Forsake it all and follow me.
And follow me. Right. He just said, "Follow me." That's his command to disciple. That's his invitation to follow discipleship. Basically, is follow me. And that was the only time that I could directly remember that he had said, "Follow me," that somebody rejected it. And I asked you, is there another? Are there other direct rejections? But the thing that kind of struck me about it is that it says he went away sad. He didn't go away angry. He didn't go away confused. He didn't go away a lot of different words you could be, frustrated, whatever. He went away sad, or he went away sorrowed, or he went away grieved, depending on the translation. One way or the other, it's like he knows he's made the wrong decision. So he must have believed. Otherwise, why be sad? Mm-hmm. If you just don't believe that Jesus is who he says he is, then you wouldn't be sad.
Yeah,
But
I've thought about that because, if you stop and think about it, the rich young ruler was the one that came and asked Jesus, what do I need to do to be saved?
yeah,
So he comes looking for, give me four assignments, or give me 4 tick marks that I can tick off that, okay, now I know I'm saved. And Jesus said, well, what did the law say? And this is the thing I think, the more I got to thinking about this thing, is his answer was, well, I've done that.
yeah,
I mean, he basically, in his own mind, is already, Jesus, tell me what I need to be saved, or better yet, just go ahead and point to me and say, boys, this is how you do it. I think he was really looking at that. Mm-hmm. Because he has such, again, this goes back to what we said earlier. When you have that focus on yourself and that pride in yourself, then your feelings are going to get hurt worse. Mm-hmm. And I believe, honestly, there was a whole lot more. And it may have been that he realized what was right, or maybe this is proving what we talked about earlier is, no, my feelings got hurt bad. Mm-hmm. Because here I am expecting Jesus to pat me on the back saying, whew, I am lucky to have this guy on our team. Mm-hmm. We'd lose every game if it wasn't for him.
Yeah.
And basically he says, oh, okay, you've done all that. Then here's one more thing you like. Yeah. And basically the rich young ruler, he has to go away knowing I can't earn my justification.
And he didn't question him about the 10 Commandments, although he probably broke every one of them.
Yeah. No.
But he caught him off guard. Yes. Caught him right there.
Right between
I wasn't
eyes.
expecting that one.
Yeah. But I mean, but it goes back to his pride was, I followed all those commands. Man, I could have wrote the commandments.
Right, yeah. But he caught him right there where.
But it was also right where
his heart was.
Yeah, where his heart was. But it also revealed his pride too. So, and it may be that he went away sad because I couldn't earn it.
yeah.
It may be he went away sad because maybe it's, I see the truth, but I'm not willing to let go of the stuff. Yeah. I think there's a piece of that. I mean, there's a lot going on there that if you really want to get in the psyche of both of them, and maybe not both of them, but at least the rich young ruler, you can stay there a while.
I like how he didn't attack him, although he knew Jesus knew he probably.
I think Jesus
every
loved
one of
him.
them.
I mean, it says Jesus loved him. I think, but you never see Jesus run after him. Wait a minute. Okay, let's work out a deal. Jesus put it on the line and says, "This is it. Choose."
Well, I did a little bit of a deeper dive into it Saturday. I think it was when I texted you that.
Yeah.
And I've heard this before. It's maybe been preached on before, but there's a very intentional the commands or what Jesus told him to do they're very calculated if you look at the commandments, right? So what he told him were basically all of the don't they were half the commandments or 4 of the commandments, whatever. Don't murder, don't steal.
He was focusing on the last 6.
On the last 6, okay, and I think
there are 2. The 10 Commandments are in two sections,
right,
or 2 tablets. First 4 deal with your relationship with God. The last 6 deal with your relationship to man.
And he listed 5 of the 6, and basically the one that he left off, I think, was coveting, maybe.
Yeah.
So if you leave that one off and replace it with basically love your neighbor as yourself, well, that kind of sums up half of what he says in what is the greatest commandment, that you love God your Father, love God with all your heart, and
love your neighbor as yourself.
So he's kind of covered the love your neighbor part in those 6 or those 5. And then when he says, I've done all those since I was young.
Perfect.
He says, okay, fine. And then when you think about it, go and sell all that you have and follow me. If he does it, that checks off the other 4.
Right.
His failure to do it is kind of summarily breaking all 4 that were left out to begin with. I believe you got a form of idol worshiping, having other gods before him.
Oh yeah,
and even
there's so much going on there. Or yeah, you're right.
and even the one that it doesn't quite is the Sabbath. But what does it say to do on the Sabbath? It tells us not to work on the Sabbath.
Right.
He was determined to rely on his works, right, one way or the other. So even the working part, it still gets weaved into it somewhere. And that at the end of the day, what he said, I hate to summarize Jesus' words, but it's basically love your father and love your neighbor. Oh, you've loved your neighbor? Okay, well then prove you love God above all else and stop relying on your own works.
Yep.
I
think you can summarize it that way too. I mean, there's so much going on with that story that you could really camp out there.
Yeah.
And and again, I wish I knew why he went away weeping.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that he's found out that he doesn't really love the Lord with all his heart, mind, body, and soul? He just likes doing the work, but not that. I mean, or is it the fact of, hey, my feelings have been hurt, or is it the fact that, hey, maybe he knows the truth and he knows he ought to, but he ain't going to?
See, I think that's kind of where I was poking around with that question a little bit, is that I believe that there are people...
That's where you started with.
Yeah. I think that there are people who believe Jesus is the way. They do believe it. They just can't get themselves over that hump of trusting in him and him alone and giving up the reins. That they want to control it. They want to have some element of control in the salvation process for whatever the reason. It may be pride, it may be control issues, it may be whatever, but maybe they think they don't deserve it, they've got to earn their way.
Yeah.
But it's just too simple for them to believe it, and they do believe it. They just can't get all the way in the barrel, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it.
I can see that being part of it. I mean, like I said, I don't know that we'll ever get a definitive answer. There's so many things you could argue for why he went away brokenhearted. Mm-hmm. Mine is, I'd like to tend that it's just like you said. He's seen the truth, but man, I just can't.
Yeah. He knows it's a bad decision. And I told you, it just makes you want to slap him upside the head and say, if you know you're making the wrong decision, then make the right one, know?
I mean, that's it. I mean, but that's the way it is with not just a rich young ruler. It's numerous people that we share the gospel with, and they reject it or they don't respond. So that's the tale as old as time, if you will, or since Christ was on the earth.
Well, and then to own our part of it too. I mean, yes, it sounds stupid to me that he would make the wrong decision. You want to slap him upside the head, but at the same time, ultimately, I have made the right decision. But hour by hour, day by day, I still make the wrong ones, and I still put my faith in me when I should be putting it in him. And I still want to slap myself upside the head and say, "Why are you doing that?"
This is the eternal. This is the eternal. This is not. Oh, I shouldn't have ate all that.
Right.
This is not. I wish I hadn't said that to them.
Yeah.
No, this is you. You have rejected the King of Glory.
Yeah.
You've rejected the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
So, but it is a great, great passage to really make you dig deep and ask some questions of, oof.
Yeah.
Am I kind of like him?
Yeah.
Have I, chosen wealth and possessions over going deeper with the Lord?
Sometimes you wonder if he ever came back. I have in the past.
No, I sent Garen an answer. I told him, I said, no, there is a rule of line or a theology that says that was actually Saul that became Paul. There's nothing to back that up, nothing that even remotely suggests that, but just some people think that, okay, I've done all that since I was young. Well, he sure enough knew the law. He lived the law.
I don't even know how you can even get that.
I just explained it.
So when you said Saul, you're talking about Saul who became Paul.
No. Saul who became Paul. So he was Saul when he taught there.
I just don't see how they can get that.
Why wouldn't they? I mean, I could make the argument.
Yeah, but why would they?
But it's not a strong argument. Well, he was a Hebrew of Hebrews. If you want to talk about somebody who knew the law, he was circumcised on the 8th day.
And I agree.
Of the tribe of Benjamin.
Right.
I mean,
I understand
he was
Paul. That's a good one.
So for somebody to come and say, I've done that since day one, would be...
But then he goes out and kills all the Christians that he can get.
But he thought he was doing the right thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. There's a lot of people more than Saul or Paul that knew the scriptures, I would think.
But not at that same time.
I don't know.
I mean, we're not talking about a 2-3 year period there, and so that's just people speculating.
Yeah.
I think
I think it
it
would
was
be kind of
Caiaphas.
cool if it was.
Probably Caiaphas.
Yeah, no, the great high priest never turned, or the high priest. He wasn't the great high priest. But I mean, if you talk about somebody that was face to face, and it said Jesus loved him, I don't know. It's a fun somebody
Who
speculating.
wrote? Which gospel is that in?
That was
You were
Matthew.
studying it.
Yeah, Matthew's.
Matthew. Okay.
So it won't Matthew.
Well, it would be a better argument if it was Luke, written in Luke.
Could have been. Or
Yeah, 'cause
he might have
Luke was-
said, hey, pay
Yeah.
attention to this, guys. It's foreshadowing.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
there is
I
nothing-
would probably, well, a possibility if Luke wrote it, but
And
Matthew.
listen, it's speculation
Yeah.
at best, and that's just straight up. I think that's just somebody trying to, this is
just trying to create something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
be kind of cool if it was,
Yeah.
but it didn't. I mean, I'm the first to say, no, it's far fetched.
Yeah.
But you can't say it ain't.
I probably could say more ain't than more.
But you can't
Yes.
say it without 100%.
Not with
doubt.
100%, but 99.9 probably.
I mean, I just argued in a court of law. You couldn't
Yeah.
find him guilty.
Yeah.
There's reasonable doubt, right?
Very little.
But that's reasonable doubt.
Very,
So
very
you're telling
little.
me there's a chance.
There's not much wiggle room on it, but yeah.
There's a chance. That's all it takes.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Okay, I do have one question for you.
Man,
Now that I.
you have come, man. You
He's had 4 one questions today.
No, I was looking into next
Really?
week.
Oh,
I
you
was looking
going? You
into-
just bring your Sunday school lesson in.
No, I was looking at what I'm going to teach next week.
Okay.
Okay, now here's the days of the coming of Christ. Remember, we're in
We're in Matthew 24. now.
24. When Christ comes, it'd be like the world would be like Noah, the
Okay.
days of Noah. I take it not. I used to take it as
And what does it say? It has something else besides just
oh
the
yeah,
days of Noah.
giving in marriage and
Eating and
eating,
drinking.
drinking.
They're going through their normal life.
Normal life. That's what I think. Normal life, giving in marriage. And I was thinking, well, at one time, because I think I heard this many years ago. It was misquoted. That was talk about marriage and divorce, marriage and divorce. Yeah, but it was just every day. That's what I think. Every day. So it's going to just. We're not looking for him.
Yeah. Well, we go about our everyday business.
Well, that's today.
With and again, remember the days of Noah were ultra wicked.
Yeah, well, yes, but
So we just go about. Well, I believe what he's saying there is the people when it's the days of Noah when we'll be operating like that is we're going about our everyday business and we still operate in wickedness and it doesn't affect us.
Yes.
It's part of our life. We're buying, we're selling,
okay
we're
with
doing
it.
this. Yeah, we just go about we're just too busy living life than to realize about the eternal.
I mean, he
life.
didn't address the wickedness, but we know it's there. We're just, we're not expecting anything change. We're just going on.
We're going through the motions.
Motion
we're
of
going
life,
through just
yeah.
living.
Okay, yeah. So that's how I take it.
Or somebody's building a boat. The days of Noah. Which
Yeah.
one?
Well, no, that was kind of crazy.
What?
Him building the boat.
120 years worth?
That's what they would have said.
Yeah. Or well,
Who would
I
listen
probably
to?
would've said the same thing.
I don't even know if I would listen to a man that would. To be honest with you, I don't even know if I would listen to someone talking about the end of the earth. I've never seen a boat.
Never
Why in
seen
the
it
middle
rain?
of a desert?
never seen it rain. Yeah.
Yeah, but he is off his rocker. I mean, that's my first thought. I would have to, and that makes a lot of sense to me. That
And what's he
we
even
don't
near
come to
water
Christ.
that they knew what a
Yeah.
boat was?
We don't come
What
to
you building,
Christ
Noah?
because we want to. We come to Christ because, well, I mean, we do come to Christ because eventually we want to. We're not drawn to
originally,
Christ.
you come to Christ
Wait.
because he draws you.
That's the thing.
Now you make that decision, but he's the one that draws
Right.
you.
Wait, you said they'd never seen it rain? Had it never
No.
rained before that?
No,
So
I
the
think
flood
it-
was the first rain? I don't know if I realized that.
Yeah.
If you read in Genesis, it talks about and the dew of the ground Basically, it was almost like a self-watering system. There was no need for
Underground
rain.
sprinkler.
Yeah, I mean, really, it kind of
I think I
was.
missed that before.
And so, for those folks, first time that rain started coming from heaven, they were flipping out.
Yeah.
But they had never. And that's really many people believe that's the atmosphere changed then, because before the flood, you had people living, Methuselah and several others living 600, 900 years. Now it goes down to 120, down to, now we're trying to creep back up a little bit because we've got some things on health. But, I mean, look, 70, you're doing well, but 70 or 40, and you're doing real well.
Yeah. Well, that was something that I read or saw or heard about that I never realized, that there's a distinct difference in how long people lived pre-flood and after flood, because it talks about after the flood how long people lived, and it wasn't long after that you could see a very clear
It drops off
decline.
tremendously.
Yeah.
Well, who was the oldest man in the Bible that died before his father?
As far as,
The oldest man.
are you trying to be funny here, or is it?
This is serious. This is true. Who's the oldest man in the Bible that died before his father?
No. I know who the oldest man in the Bible was, but I know this isn't what the answer is going to be. So, because you're throwing in that who died before his father.
Uh-huh.
So,
Wasn't his father Enoch? Enoch.
well, okay, Methuselah. Well, Enoch never.
He
died.
never died. Yeah,
I think that's his daddy
yeah. I thought so.
Right.
Yeah,
or granddaddy, one or the other. They're kin.
yeah. Well, Methuselah died before his father, but he's the oldest man. It don't even make sense, does it?
No. But Methuselah was the oldest man. Man, that's a lot of years to live.
How long did he live?
960.
969.
I knew it was in the 960s,
969, I
950s.
think.
Yeah.
1,000 years, man. Forget
There's
that.
I think there's quite a few of them. What, Adam 915?
But there were several that were 800, 900
Yeah,
years old.
close. Yeah, 893 or something. Yeah,
But then, like I said, the flood and the climate,
change the atmosphere. Yeah.
and that's where, so it had not rained. So I don't know. Maybe
Do you
it
think
doesn't
it's
rain,
that,
there's
or
a drought.
God said He was going to live at the age of men?
I think
I think it's part of it.
But
I
I
mean,
think the climate changed too.
Well, that might have been how He was going to do it.
Yeah.
Yes, but God said,
Well, I mean, he said, my spirit dwelled with them 120 years.
Yeah.
So basically, and even then, that's kind of a, golly, that's a long time.
I heard a very misquoted, that scripture was misquoted by a so-called preacher. God told him he was going to live 120 years old.
Did he make it?
They still live it. Says it's going to be out here in 2058.
How old is he now? 60
80-some years old.
now?
Yeah. But he did. He said,
Is that on
He-
DraftKings? 'Cause I know which way I'm going to put my money.
first of all, he's misquoting the scripture.
Sure it is.
That's
Sure
just
it is.
like, man, that wouldn't even. But God told him, and that is the scripture that he read.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I know.
Does he believe it only applied to him?
That's what
he
God told
must
him.
have.
I mean, is that basically what
Well,
he's saying?
I'm sure
I'm
he's
not
been
gonna-
to a funeral.
I won't say his name, but he's the richest pastor, so-called. I don't call him a preacher, but he's the richest preacher in America, at least, or maybe the world.
Yeah, I'm number 5 on the list.
Well, you're not too far behind.
Man, you gotta be kidding.
No, I heard him say it.
I think that's my
I-
cue, Bob
I-
Lewis.
You heard him say it.
Yeah, on YouTube.
You heard him say I'm number 5 on the list.
No.
Bye, everybody. This is a perfect little snapshot of the attention span or lack thereof of society. We've set a new record last week on our YouTube channel for the number of views of the short clips.
Right. Oh,
The
yes.
short clips that I put out was just the intro.
Short's where it's
basically.
at, man.
Yeah, and I went over to look at the full length video, and it was also a record for the fewest views that we've ever
Well,
had.
and I'll say I think that's just it's the attention span maybe,
Yeah.
but I think it's just people's the time that people have.
Yeah.
So I just need to be familiar with Matthew and Mark. Okay,
Might be Mark.
is it having to deal with
Lucas.
differences?
Yeah, Lucas too, maybe.
Yeah, and Juan
Do what?
and Juan.
Yeah.